Hello everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and I'm here to review Amores Perros, and this is from director Alejandro G Inarritu, and watching this for the movie club, so check out the next Development Hell podcast episode that's going to be coming out towards the end of this month, last week in May, where I'm joined by Jim, Alex, Matt, and Vinny to talk about this, but for now, just chatting about this for my specific review, for my own personal thoughts on this film. I'm a big fan of Birdman. I remember seeing that film and being hooked from the very beginning. It's like, it smells like balls in here. And, like, that was that actually might have been my second experience, because in film club in high school, I saw 21 Grams. And I loved Birdman. The Revenant is an incredibly made film, and it might not have been, like, I have a little bit of issues with the film, but in general, it blew me away. And going back and watching this film, this 2-hour, 35-minute interwoven, like, crime thriller drama about a young man who's in love with his sister-in-law, who gets involved in dogfighting. You have a man who's married and is having an affair with a model who winds up getting seriously injured and potentially losing her leg. And then you have this hitman who lives a life as like a hobo with his dogs, and him coming to grips with what he does. And all three of these stories are interwoven here and focused on this car accident that starts this film. And to look at how it started, you have Guillermo Arriaga, who is the writer of this film, and how they balance everything is absolutely incredible. You have Gustavo Santaolalla, who is the composer for this film. The kind of electronica that winds up in certain parts of the film to increase the intensity, and then this just beautiful, weeping, like, Eric Clapton would be jealous kind of weeping guitar that just brings so much emotion. And then Rodrigo Prieto, who I love his work in films like especially Silence with Martin Scorsese. And this film has a very distinct look to it. It's very raw. It's very emotional. You have that handheld cam. It could be a little too shaky at times, but it feels very visceral, very raw. And the choices so often to have that camera real up close to make those intimate shots work and really make us feel in this moment. And Alejandro G Inarritu just weaves all of this together to create such a hugely emotional and impactful experience. And I was enthralled from start to finish for a 2-hour and 35-minute movie that is mostly human drama with some intense moments sprinkled throughout. This is like more like a Sicario than an action movie. It doesn't have like action as the crux of it, but it has violence and sporadic violence and very gruesome violence and very bloody violence, and they get very graphic with the dogfighting in this movie, so be prepared. And you have this film. It opens with this very aggressive and intense and visceral and raw car chase that ends in this horrific car accident that kind of pushes these three stories off, and they're broken into thirds, and you have this brutal, there's so much subject matter in terms of like domestic violence and murder and crime and dogfighting and adultery and all of these different kinds of things. And really, it's so thematic in the way that it deals with death and fate. And there's so many things, like just dominoes that hit and just cause so many ripples, those waves throughout this narrative, through these three stories. And it's so incredibly interwoven. It never feels cheap. It never feels like trying to force these stories together. It feels organic and raw in the way that these all come together. And it's really impressive because this is a commonality in some of his other films as well, with 21 Grams and Babel. And it works so well in this film. You could tell this is like early filmmaker, and you really have mystery and intrigue throughout. You have particularly intense and emotionally brutal scenes throughout this film that I will not give away, but there's some that left me like I almost wanted to stop watching because it hit me emotionally so hard. It is a very challenging and heartbreaking film. This will push you as an audience member, and a lot of people will be turned off by that it's too much. It goes too far. And for me, it's very much flirting on that line of just being cruel. And honestly, that was one of the things that started to settle in during my viewing of The Revenant. Was that like, my God, how many more things can you possibly do to this man? And it became overbearing a bit for me. This film didn't quite get there, but it pushed that envelope. And I appreciated the ambition of this film and of Inarritu to push those boundaries and challenge his audience. And in the end, the acting in this between Gael Garcia Bernal, who obviously is a much bigger star now, but he is so great in this film as Octavio, our young man who's in love with his sister-in-law and who gets roped into this challenge of like, it's lovely to make this money, but potentially losing his dog. You have Emilio Echeverria, who plays Alchivo, this hitman, whose arc, some of these arcs, I was so engrossed with the first story, I never could have imagined these other two were going to hit me. That last one hit me so hard. And then you have Goya Toledo, who plays Valeria, who's this model, who her section of the story with Alvaro Guerrero, Daniel, her lover, this was probably the most surprising, that it really grabbed me. And then you just have this whole cast really works so well and sells this film. I was really impressed by this. If you're ready to be challenged and be engrossed in the cinematic experience, go check out Amores Perros. And this is on Amazon. If you can't handle a lot of brutality, or if it's like you're turned off by like a 2 hour and 35-minute drama with extremely intense subject matter, you might want to pass on this one. It might be a bit too much, and I could definitely see this film being a bit too much for people. But for me, I got lost in it, and it surely delivered. There's very few times I feel like something is so intense that I have to turn it off, and this film almost got me there. But those are my thoughts on Amores Perros. Let me know what you think, and let's talk some movies. But thank you as always for tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.